What's going on, Internet? It's Nick from Sick Till Death bringing you another episode of Behind the Screen. In this episode, we are going to go through the live living session document that I have been talking about in these last previous episodes. As I was editing, I realized that it was better if I split this into two. So in the last episode, you saw me talk about the History of Haven document and the Magical Items document. Those are kind of the auxiliary documents that I don't always reference, but I like to have open in case I need to reference them. And it was also a good episode for you all, so you got to see kind of the world that my players inhabit, the world I've created, and basically where we're at in the story thus far. In this episode, you're going to see that living document. This is, a very detailed, descriptive document of what is going on in the upcoming sessions that I have planned out for our campaign. So, without further ado, let's get into it and show you what I have behind the screen. So with that said, I'm going to get into the living document. This is basically what I run my D&D session using, okay? So I'll often read a summary, not only for the stream, but since we don't play on a regular basis, I use this summary to give certain plot points, certain beats in the story that I want my players to be reminded of, whether they have taken notes on it or not. Sometimes they take good notes. Sometimes they take good notes, but it's the wrong thing that they're focusing on. Then what I do, I have a shit ton of things written out. Now, sometimes this is things that I take notes on as I'm going through the session live. My players might say something and I'm like, oh shit, let me write this down. I have like 12 sticky pads here. Also, sometimes I will be thinking of something. I might be watching a D&D stream. I might be watching a YouTube video about something, or just a show, and it'll spark something in my mind, and I'll write that sort of stuff down as well. And on top of that, since I'm streaming and I have the VODs, I'll usually watch the VOD once or twice in my free time to see if I missed anything. I urge you all to watch the VODs. They're going to be on this YouTube channel soon because my players are crazy in the most beautiful ways possible. And
if it's dry, my pipe.
You're going to smoke your pipe. So you all watch as Trios takes out his pipe and just takes a nice big toke.
Shut up.
Roll a Constitution saving throw.
What are you doing?
You are incapacitated for the next turn.
You just fucking throwing yourself out.
But you do have a fog cloud around these individuals, and they are considered blind for the time being.
It's already yeah, okay.
At this point, I'm just gonna throw a fireball into it.
Fuck it.
Just let the record show in the middle of a fight, my man decides to fucking go bad.
Alright. If you want a full explanation as to what's going on in this story, best thing to do is to watch those VODs. I'm going to have some recap videos here and there, but it's truly entertaining. So, what I will also do is kind of run through what I'm seeing here in this Word document and edit things that I may need to, right? If you watched episode 1 of Behind the Screen, and if you haven't, I urge you to go check out that episode as well, including, the last 4 or 5 at this point. In episode 1, I explained I'll have these bits of dialogue. Normally, it's just a reference for me. Sometimes I'll read it verbatim. Other times, I'll kind of just take a quick glance, say whatever comes to mind. But it seems verbose, but it's more so as a reference or a kind of cheat sheet for me as I'm in the moment. I'm never opposed to giving my players more options, and I think that's the main thing about this document here as well, is that it's more verbose. There's a lot going on because I like to give them the ultimate amount of options possible. So This next session is very information heavy. So I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to have something lost in translation. So I'll tend in those moments to be more verbose. That way my players get the full picture, right? This is basically the initial meeting between the Sovereign, who is the foster father of Gallandale, and the group, the task force. Some of these things might not come up, and in that instance, I might put a star or asterisk next to it in my session notes in case it comes up down the road. And that's another thing. I'll usually go through my previous session notes, see what I marked, and I'll put that into the new document, okay? Don't want to get too much into detail about that meeting. There is a moment, so our wizard Valgrim, I love him. I love the player, Jay, too. He's very goal detail oriented. That's great, but at times that means that if he is too concerned about his own personal agenda, he may miss some things that happen in the overall story. And while as a DM, I'm willing to allow that to happen, I may offer him a chance to still be a part of the overall group or story arc. So with that said, I added a note here to kind of urge him to join this meeting, because I kind of have the feeling that he may want to try to sit this out. In the last session, he tried sitting out this feast that he and the rest of the group were invited to.
Originally, the plan was get there, I'd spend a night learning all those spells, and then I'd kind of rest for the exhaustion. But because I have to wait anyway for this thing, I'm going to spend the night learning the spells that I need to. The next day, I'll pick up the test or the task of getting into the laboratory, and then I'll focus on that.
Okay. Casimir looks to you. You seem quite busy, but I would urge you to at least spend an hour with us to discuss our matters over dinner.
Hey, not really.
But also in going to that feast, he was given the opportunity to study in the Sovereign's High Mage's laboratory, her own personal laboratory. I would say it all worked out, but I foresee him wanting to sit out in this initial meeting. So I have a note here, so I want to add that to this section. On top of that, I have some notes here, and I don't know how much of this is going to pertain to anything. This sheet is basically, as I was watching the VODs, things I may have forgotten, right? So first and foremost, I have to write up a letter of recommendation. I may write it and give him a physical copy because I like to do that sort of thing. May not. We'll see. I also have an item. The group befriended an amethyst dragon. As I said, if you haven't watched the VODs, check them out when they're available. There was a pretty crazy fight. They gifted the group with this thing. It's a Teia stone. And as they say this, they hold out their right hand, and in the palm, a cloud of swirling arcane energy appears, and you watch as 7 small purple gemstones begin to form out of this arcane energy. They look like amethyst, much like this dragon's body is comprised of, but they all seem to hold a small spark of energy within them, and it reaches out its hand to you and beckons you to take one each. Some have come to call these Teia stones. Many adventurers of old thought these brought luck to the wearer, and while they are not wrong, they did not truly understand its nature. One for each of you as you continue your journeys throughout. This is basically one-time use. If you roll poorly, you get to re-roll once, but you have to tell me that you want to use the Teia stone. On here as well, I also have, I was getting grilled about Sylvanest's, or the Qualinesti clan's, intelligence. The group slain a ancient white dragon, and while it seems like a big deal, in the overall bit of happenings in the Syndicate storyline, it really wasn't a big deal to the Sylvanest City. And also, the reason they were on that part of the world or continent is because it was kind of a side quest for our rogue Conrad. So the intelligence agencies didn't feel it pertinent to track and follow and continually get this intel on the group. So I was continually getting grilled about why they didn't know that they killed a a white dragon.
Your informants didn't know about an ancient dragon being slain a week and a half ago, just north of here?
Luskin is quite far. It's not just north. And when it comes to matters of the Syndicate and Rizal, those seem to be more pressing matters that they needed to convey to us. Also, it's probably hard for our informants to tail you when you're flying on an airship.
We killed the dragon just off the coast.
This is news to us.
Huh.
I have a note here to kind of reassure them that they can trust them, the intelligence agency, and not to worry. I also have a note here. After hearing this, the advisors and High Mage of the Sovereign is going to do some research on this ancient white dragon. They're going to learn that it was Frostbane and come back to the group and say, hey, by the way, you killed a member of the Concordance of the Scale. And I might have already added that. I might not have. I'm not going to trudge through this document for that, but I wanted to at least let you know that I have all that stuff. I have a few other notes that will get put into here as well, but that's a basic rundown of my thought process, my process in general, my workflow, if you will, of what I do and how I'm constantly updating this living document, right? The other thing that I do is I run through here and I see what I'm going to need for my next session, right? And that actually reminds me, I may want to change, and I'm just going to do this on the fly because I forgot to put this down. And this I will just put here. I've been wanting to incorporate vampires into one of these side quests, and I also wanted to do like some sort of raider / pirate type, session. And the thing is, some of these requests are optional, right? The group has so many things in their list of to-dos, but these will help them gain favor of certain councils in Sylvanest, and it will give them allies, may give them certain boons, and make them greater heroes of the realm that they already are. So I'm just going to put this note here. I like Off the Coast better. There's been this underlying story arc. I keep planting seeds about Miracle. I keep planting seeds about the Dead 3 for that very reason. So, with all that said, what I normally do then is I will read through this document to see what I need. There's going to be a future episode where I paint some terrain, I build a battle map. That's for an encounter here on this page, and then later on, I have this right here below my face cam, the Dance of the Blade song. In a previous episode of Behind the Screen, I showed you very roughly this kind of theater locale. That's where this Dance of the Blade song is going to happen. As I'm reading through this, I'll make a to-do list, like, oh, I need to print this terrain. Oh, I need to print this miniature. As your DIY dungeon master, I like to do a lot of this stuff myself. Usually when I print a miniature, it means I have to paint it. Same thing with the terrain. I have to build the battle map. I also have a list here of some things that may or may not come up, but I also have build maps, the Grove Grottos, which is kind of the central locale for the assembly and where the Sovereign lives. The other thing that I do, and I'll usually have this open also in the background, is my D&D Beyond stuff. So what you're seeing here is a list of encounters. In that document, you saw a graveyard meeting, right? I'm not going to get too into detail as to what this is. What I do is I will have those encounters open, and sometimes what I'll do on my living document is, as part of the encounter breakdown, I'll make like a little cheat sheet or a quick little blurb as to how each NPC, enemy, villain, whatever you want to call them, how they're going to interact if attacked, things along those lines, right? So on top of that, I mentioned that amethyst shard earlier on. I will go in and homebrew stuff, right? I'm not going to go through that process. I can make a whole episode on that as well, but I like me some homebrew. If I need to homebrew something, I will. And I'll also play test encounters just to see maybe those creatures that I have my players going up against are a little bit too powerful. Maybe they're too weak and I need to bolster them a bit. So I usually have that open as I'm running through this document to kind of help myself figure out anything that I may need to add or delete from here. That's the D&D Beyond side of things. And that is going to do it for this episode of Behind the Screen. If you guys stuck with me all the way through, I truly appreciate you. I would love it if you dropped a like and subscribe to the channel for future content. The next few episodes is going to be more of that DIY DM stuff that you've seen in the last few episodes. So I'm going to be painting terrain, building some terrain, and the normal shenanigans that happens in that week or so leading up to our game. Also in a future episode, I'm probably going to show you the stream setup, because while not all of you stream, I think some of you may be curious as to what my setup is and exactly what kind of gear and tech I'm using for the stream. So without further ado, I appreciate you all once again for watching. Thank you, and I will catch you guys in the next episode.